Welcome myRockworld. Today I have the pleasure to meet Bruce Soord, who is the founder of the great rock band The Pineapple Thief, which plays tonight in Munich at the backstage. And they just released a really great album. It's called The Solution. And we have the honor to welcome Bruce and do an interview.
Oh, thank you very much.
Welcome in Munich. So, just give us a brief interview about the Pineapple Thief, about the founding in 1999, in some of your words, and also the changes of the original lineup to now.
Yeah, I think if you look at, well, when we started, well, when I started it in 1999, it was just a solo project. I just played everything in my bedroom studio, and I had a very, very small record label called Cyclops that put the records out. And the first album took what seemed like an age just to sell a couple of hundred copies. 500 copies. We was just enough for the label to say, okay, we'll do another one.
Okay.
And so that was how that was the humble beginnings. And so for the first sort of 3 or 4 records, that's what it was like.
Yes.
And then we released an album called Variations on a Dream, and that seemed to step us up a little bit, enough for us to get asked to play some gigs. And of course I didn't have a band because that was just me on my own. So that's when I got my friends together and we rehearsed, and we weren't particularly good back then, but we were good enough to get out and play and meet the fans. And so that was the next sort of era of the band, when we actually finally got out onto the road, and that's when the fan base started to really sort of grow.
Okay.
And then what I think the big change was when we did an album called Little Man. Stephen Wilson was touring with Blackfield, and he was asking his fans for a support band suggestion, and a load of Pineapple Thief fans got in touch with him, and it forced Stephen to get in contact with me, because he says, Bruce, send me your stuff, and you can tell your fans to leave me alone now, because there's so many people got in touch with him. And he heard it, and he really liked the album, and he gave me a lot of good advice on how to move forward, and he put in a good word for me on with my label that I'm on now, K-Scope.
Yes.
So it was Stephen really that got me the deal with K-Scope, and that was the second real era of the band. So when we released our first album on K-Scope, which I think was our 7th record, Tightly Unwound, that's when again we stepped up, and I think so that's when we started to tour Europe. And then when Gavin joined,
this was for the album
for Your
Wilderness.
Then things stepped up again, and I think that when Gavin joined, that was the 3rd real era for the band.
Yeah.
And when you look back on it, it's a long journey. Nearly 20 years.
It's a long
nearly
journey.
20 years. But I think the last 3 years has been a real ramp up, and I think obviously having Gavin on board has had a huge impact on the sound and the people that know.
He's also involved in the songwriting.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that was the difference with. I think that surprised everybody. That when we asked Gavin initially as a session, we didn't know whether he would do the session, because he only does sessions if he likes the music and still feels he can contribute. But then, I think when he got to know us even initially, he realised that musically this was right up his street. It was something that he could connect with. We seemed to get on well straight away, and so it became more than a session. I think Gavin will admit that. He'll say, that he got quite involved. He was giving me suggestions on things to change, and so it became very creative. And I think, and crucially for us is obviously when we finished the record, we thought, oh my god, what are we going to do? We've got to play live. And once you've got Gavin playing on a record, I don't think there's any drummer in the world that sounds like Gavin Harrison. So we were in a bit of a pickle. So luckily we convinced Gavin to come on tour, and I don't think he's ever toured a session. He's never just gone out and played live from a session. So that was a big thing. And then we got on really well on the road, and that's how Dissolution was born. Really, the fact is that the relationship was. So
Dissolution is the first really band project in this new lineup.
Absolutely, yeah. And so when we started, we all knew each other. We all knew what we wanted to do. And we were comfortable with each other. So yeah, I'd probably say Your Wilderness was the blueprint, and Dissolution was was the beginning.
Understand.
So it's quite exciting. It feels like we've got
let's go into the new album, Dissolution, we just spoke about. How did the things come together in songwriting? Is there a strategy in writing the songs and recording, or is it more a session thing, or is it written before and then a demo and then go into the studio? Because as you said, this is the first project all four were put in this lineup and created something.
Yeah, no, it was really quite natural how it all came together. We never actually sat down and say, right, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it like this.
So there was no concept for the album?
No, not initially. So initially it was just let's see what happens.
Okay.
So Gavin would have some ideas. He would come have some rhythmic ideas. He'd also have a few sort of musical ideas. You know, he's got a really nice old Wurlitzer in his a Whirly in his studio, and I would have some ideas, but instead of like taking the songs and writing stuff, you know, writing songs and saying, hey guys, here's a song.
Yes.
It would be very much like, here's a riff, here's an idea, here's a vocal melody. And
like in the old days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Gavin would say, oh yeah, Bruce, I like that. And then he would start drumming some ideas, and then together the song would take its own path. Yeah, like you say, like as if you were jamming, apart from the fact that we were still like 150 miles apart, because we'd be doing it online. So we'd be talking to each other daily.
So it was recorded online?
Recorded.
You were on different places?
Recorded in different places, yeah.
This is
I think a lot of people don't realise that, but it was still, I don't want people to think that it was a really sterile environment, because it wasn't. We were talking constantly. And if anything, I don't know about you, but when you're jamming with someone, there's quite high pressure. Yeah. If I was sat in Gavin's room and he does this rhythm, I'd be initially straight away you'd be under a lot of pressure to come up with something. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah, you're right.
Whereas if Gavin sends me something, then I can go, oh, that's interesting, and I can spend a couple of hours really getting into it, and then I send it back to Gavin, and if he liked it, he would go, yeah, Bruce, this is good, and then he would be inspired to do other things, and so it worked. Yeah, it worked really well. We had a good system going.
So it was not one song was recorded live in a studio?
No, none of them.
Okay,
no.
This is interesting, because it's a very complex music, but it's not this kind of a head music, you know. It has a feeling.
Yes, and that's something
and
that
I thought about that. This was my interest, how you record it, because I know a lot of musicians record over the internet, online, and put the things together, but not many bands can create a warm feeling with like you play in a live concert.
Yes, and I think that's the thing. And in a way, I kind of not regret, but I wonder if I should let people know that that's how we did it, because people would automatically think, well, how could you possibly get that? But we weren't all like heads down working in our little silos. We were all. It was all together.
Yeah. And what is the difference playing them live? Is there more space for solos, or do you reproduce the album in quite a way?
Yeah, no, I think we've got George, who's come on tour with us, who's playing the lead guitar parts.
Yes.
And I think live, there's a little bit more scope to have a bit more, to be a bit more indulgent, I think. And so it is a bit different.
So coming back to the new album, what is your personal own favorite song on the album, and why?
I think I've been asked this question before, and it was really tricky, and I settled on Threatening War, only because for me it goes through all the sort of emotions that I like as a songwriter, because it's soft, it gets quite complex but in an accessible way, and lyrically I like it, and it just covers all the ground. It's dynamic and covers a lot of ground, sort of defines who we are almost.
How would you describe your music style? Because I introduced you as a rock band.
Yeah.
But it's much more than just rock.
It's so difficult.
Because it has a lot of modern influences, like I can hear some Bowie things, and so how would you describe your music?
Well, it's funny. It's very, very, very hard, because the progressive rock community has been really good to us as when we were small and growing. But we certainly, if you look at the modern progressive rock world, we don't sound like anything like a lot of them.
I think so.
You know? Yeah. So when people go, "Oh, you're a progressive rock band," you'd immediately have this image of a band that's not us. But then we're not just a rock band either. You know, and I don't want to be called a few people have been calling us art rock, and I'm thinking, what do you
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
That's implying that normal rock isn't art. You know, don't say that. Don't say that. I don't like it. And, so it's difficult. But yeah, I mean, we're a rock band with progressive influences, I guess. But for me, it's always about the songs and the melody.
That's what it's all about. You're right. What are the next plans, and maybe a live album from the tour?
Well, yeah, we are recording it, so
Cool.
so yes, and because
Hopefully we get one.
Yes, I hope so. But
Great news.
I mean, we're already talking about the next record, because obviously we finished about 6 months ago. I mean, obviously it won't be released for, normally it's about a 2-year cycle.
Yeah.
But I think we're already looking at Gavin's schedule with King Crimson, so making and planning in the times when we can work together.
Yeah, great. What will be on the set list of tonight? How many songs from the new album?
Nearly all of them.
Really?
There's I think all of them minus 2.
Okay.
So and then we've got like the best of the back catalogue, and obviously
sure.
the fans' favourites from Your Wilderness as well.
Cool. Which is a great album, and I love that you get the famous saxophone player of Supertramp.
Oh, well, that's the thing.
Because he's a cool guy. I met him just 3 weeks ago.
Did
in
you?
Munich. Yeah.
Oh, what was he doing out there? Was he?
He was in a Night of the Prom concert thing.
Yes, he was telling us about that.
And he's always a very gentleman guy, and
lovely guy.
And Supertramp was one of the big bands.
Well, that's when we talk about progressive rock. I grew up listening to the melodic 70s bands, and Supertramp was one of my favourite. They almost define.
Have you ever seen them live in the classic lineup?
I wish I did. I'm never going to be able to see them.
I saw them a lot of times. And did you know that they started in Munich?
No, I didn't. No.
They started in Munich in a small club where they had the opportunity to play, the possibility to play every Monday.
Right.
So if you have a possibility to play every Monday, you play, and then you create a record.
Right.
The first 3 records were made in Munich.
Wow.
What do you love or do outside of Munich, of music? What is your passion?
I think the big thing with outside of when you're a musician, especially a songwriter, is being able to switch off.
I know.
To fill your brain with something else.
That is my question.
Yeah. So cooking, I love cooking. I do all the cooking at home.
Perfect.
And and that's a time when I listen to listen to other music in the kitchen, in my kitchen while I'm cooking, have a bit of wine, and I love playing football. But I'm getting a bit old now. The joints are starting to ache a bit.
What are where your heroes starting out to play music?
When I was growing up, like I said, it was in the 80s when I was my formative years. But in England, the popular music scene was pretty bad then. So it was it was kind of the new romantic era, and also the start of the really horrible pop era, the Stock Aitken and Waterman era. But so I went back to the 70s. Me and my friends at school, we were just listening to, like I said, we were listening to Supertramp, Camel, Yes, all that kind of stuff,
really?
and Pink Floyd, obviously.
The great old bands.
Yeah, the big old sort of progressive rock bands, but then we, and as when the grunge came along, that was a big influence, like Soundgarden and all that, and the early Chili Peppers. The bass player John were really into that. When we met near 27 years ago, it was we were playing Chili Pepper covers in a band. Great memories. Really good memories. And and then more recently, I'm a big fan of Beck's more melancholic style. There's an album he did called Sea Change that I absolutely adore. A broad sort of range of people.
Tell us a funny a funny story, a secret nobody knows about the band or about yourself that nobody knows. Maybe a funny turbo secret or something.
Oh, I have to think now. I'll have to have a good thing, because we are quite a sensible band now, because obviously we've had some made some calamitous errors. I remember one gig when we were in our sort of mid years when we didn't tour, but we were offered one-off gigs. So for instance, there'd be a festival in Europe and you would rehearse, you would drive all this way to do one show. And we did this one show and we were all quite nervous, and I remember, you know, I ran on stage and I played the first chord as hard as I could, and I kicked my legs out and I kicked the cable out of my guitar, and I saw it on the floor and this noise was coming out the speakers, and I picked it up and I'd actually pulled the entire electronics out of the you know, the socket had come out. So I was thinking, oh my god, what am I going to do? And I turned around and the keyboard player, because in those days he had sheet music on his keyboards before we had iPads and stuff like that, and it all blew away in the wind, and we were like looking at each other going, oh my god. So it was a very long drive home, but you know, that kind of thing makes you strong.
This
makes
you
stronger.
This is a cool story. So last but not least, some words to your fans, please.
Oh well, I guess, you know, how proud I am that we're still doing this. You know, it'll be 20 years next year.
My god.
And that wouldn't be possible.
And as you said before, it was a solo project.
Yeah.
It was never expected that the band.
No, I would never dream that I'd be sat here talking to you now. Yeah. That we'd be touring with Gavin, and the only reason we're doing that is because there are people out there that are prepared to find new bands and new music. You know, through people like yourself.
Yeah, and that's right.
So yeah, thank you.
But you know that good music always finds its ways and its fans.
It does, as long as you've got the patience. And you don't just, because there's so many people I know that seem to have a short-term view of music, and you know, they're really passionate, but they say, right, I'm going to give it a year. I'm going to give it 12. I just don't think it works like that anymore. You've really got to, if you're passionate about it, you give it your life, I guess.
That's it.
Yeah.
But nobody knows of the new bands. Nobody knows that the early bands in the 60s, they almost played 4 shows a day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like the Beatles,
you
have
to
Hamburg,
survive all that shit.
You do,
And then it was not just going on the hill and have success.
And yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the interview, and have a great
much.
show tonight.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thanks.
Cheers.